Well, more UFO whistleblowers are coming forward to confirm what David Grusch, another UFO whistleblower from the Pentagon, told us about a week and a half ago in his explosive interview in The Debrief, which is that the United States government has downed craft, has alien architected crafts, which have been reverse engineered for decades by the U.S. military and other world governments. This is perhaps the biggest story of all time. Why are we not hearing more about this? Well, now new whistleblowers are coming forward to confirm what David Grusch has said. For that, we wanted to get the expertise of perhaps one of the world's most renowned researchers in this field on exopolitics and alien interactions with human beings. That is Dr. Michael Salla. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Clayton, for having me.
Real pleasure, a real treat to have you here. And, I have to say, we're going to cover a lot of ground today, and I want our audience to come at this with an open mind. And you may have some preconceived notions about things in the universe, and you maybe sit there with your arms crossed for most of the time when you hear topics like this. But I really want our audience, to come at this from a place of openness and allow Dr. Salla to really talk about his experience here. So, Dr. Salla, this week, I want to start with what we saw this week. We saw a whistleblower over the past week or so come forward, a Pentagon whistleblower, and in a series of reports and interviews saying that he filed a complaint with the Pentagon because of the suppression of UFOs, of craft that the United States has in its possession, alien bodies, etc. This information is being kept from the American public. His name is David Grusch, apparently has the highest level of clearance inside the Pentagon, and there's been mixed reaction to his whistleblower testimony, coming forward and talking and telling the world about this. What was your initial response to seeing this? Because you have a lot of experience dealing with these whistleblowers who've come forward to reveal similar things. What did you think this week when you saw this?
Well, I thought it was very significant that, firstly, that story that was published in The Debrief was first passed by the New York Times, Politico, and The Hill, and that the authors had to run it through The Debrief, even though they had previously published in the New York Times similar stories with their kind of rigorous background checking of the witnesses. So, straight away you get a clue that there's some kind of different factions involved in this kind of issue concerning UFO crash retrievals and reverse engineering efforts. And I think what we saw with David Grusch's testimony is that there is a faction of people behind him that are encouraging him to come forward to reveal this, because this is the time for the American public to know that these kinds of reverse engineering projects concerning retrieved extraterrestrial spacecraft that go all the way back. I mean, the earliest instance that I know of was Cape Girardeau in 1941 in Missouri. So that was the home state of President Harry Truman, and one of the factors that maybe led to him becoming president. So you go all that way back, and there have been that's 80 years of these crash retrievals happening in the United States and elsewhere around the world, with lots of people coming forward talking about the existence of these crash retrieval operations, and that there has been reverse engineering going on. And of course, that's been dismissed and ridiculed all that time. And so now to have such a senior bureaucrat such as David Grusch coming forward saying, not only that this is going on, but also that there is a concerted effort by the Arrow office to just ignore that data. And you contrast what he revealed in terms of, these are extraterrestrial craft and even bodies are involved, with the response by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick to the idea that some of the UAPs are extraterrestrial in origin, and just dismissing that outright. So I think we're talking about two different factions or groups within the government military-industrial complex that have opposing positions about how much and when to reveal about these reverse engineering projects.
So two different factions. What do you think are the motivations of each of these factions?
Well, one faction just wants the truth to come out, and I think that's more the military faction, because they stand the most to benefit. I mean, if you look at it in terms of cost-benefit analysis, if you suddenly have the existence of these alien technologies that can be reverse engineered to build spacecraft that are capable of kind of like interplanetary, interstellar conflict or interstellar travel, then you're going to have the Navy wanting to have space carrier groups. You're going to have the Air Force, or now Space Force, wanting to have fleets of anti-gravity craft that can go to Pluto and back, in an hour, because that'll be a legitimate concern for the military, that in order to protect national security and global security. And then on the other hand, you have the intelligence community that wants to keep this all secret, because the CIA and the National Reconnaissance Office, I mean, they have their own secret space program. And the more they keep this secret, the more that they can use these craft that are built by major companies such as Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman, to have their own fleets of covert spacecraft that they can use all around the planet for covert operations. So, it goes back to that same struggle that goes to the Kennedy administration and earlier, between the US military's legitimate concerns to defend national security and having the equipment and the tools to do so, with the intelligence community's desire to keep everything kind of secret and to maximize its own influence behind the scene, and just kind of keep the military at bay, or restrict their access to these kinds of technologies. So that's ultimately what I think is going on here, Clayton, that you have a military backed effort to reveal all this, because they want to have their space cruisers, they want to have their battle fleets that are in deep space, as opposed to the intelligence community that want to keep all this under wraps because they get the benefit the most.
Interesting. Right. And the money, of course, follow the money in this situation, right? So when you look at the launch of the Space Force, how does the Space Force fit into these factions?
Well, the Space Force was very important because that was predicated on the idea that space is a war-fighting domain, or a domain for potential conflict. Whereas prior to the creation of Space Force, space was considered a benign environment. So with that kind of definition, you had the 1967 Outer Space Treaty in effect, which basically said that space is a benign environment. You can't have military bases up there. You can't have nuclear bases nuclear weapons up there. That space needs to be considered the kind of common for the common benefit of all humanity. But with the creation of Space Force, now space is considered a warfighting domain, which basically means that the Pentagon and of course Space Force and US Space Command in particular now can actually deploy assets deep into space, because space is a contested battlefield now, or could be a contested battlefield where you have China, Russia, and any other kind of actors with a presence in space that could threaten US national security. So that was the big shift in terms of what was it that led to the creation of Space Force. And it's very interesting that just before the creation of Space Force, looking at space as a warfighting domain needing a dedicated military service was actually subjected to a gag order by the Secretary of the Air Force, Heather Wilson, who was the first secretary under President Trump. And there was a gag order. So the four-star general in running the US Air Force couldn't talk about the need for creating a dedicated military or space service that would be responsible for dealing with space as a warfighting domain. So that has all shifted now. And so that means that space is one where you can actually have these future fleets involving anti-gravity craft being developed and deployed by Space Force and under the overall control of Space Command.
Did you believe David Grusch's testimony when he came forward and spoke in what he was quoted as saying inside the debrief, and then the subsequent television interview that he did for News Nation?
Definitely, yeah. I think everything he said is absolutely correct in terms of my own kind of research into this over the last 22 years, that there are people who have access to these classified programs that involve reverse engineering of captured extraterrestrial spacecraft and building fleets of these anti-gravity vehicles that are used for select customers, which is basically the intelligence community and the covert military, special operations command and so forth. And so I think everything he said kind of matches what others have said in the past. Now, when we look at the motivation behind that, is he a mouthpiece for this faction that wants this information to come out, or is he a kind of setting up some kind of false flag operation or a limited hangout where they get ahead of the story? Because that's what's not clear at the moment. What's the motivation behind it? Because I think it's very unusual for a whistleblower who comes forward to talk about these things not being massively retaliated against in some way.